The views and opinions expressed on the following program may not necessarily reflect the views of the staff, management, or board of Hope Media Group and KSBJ. It's what's happening around us, in our town, suburb, city, in our community. It's Community Beat with Kim Kasi McKee on 89.3 KSBJ.
Well, hello and welcome to Community Beat, where we're keeping you tuned into the topics that are impacting our local communities and helping them thrive. I'm your host, Kim Kasi McKee, and it's that time of year when we look forward to spending quality time with our families and friends, enjoying the sights and sounds of the season. And boy, do we have a wonderful opportunity for you and your family this Christmas season to do just that. Beginning this month, you will have an opportunity to hear the retelling of a Christmas classic known for the past 180 years as Scrooge, A Christmas Carol. And this time, you will hear A Christmas Carol as a podcast presentation by Hope Media Group and Compassion International. And we have joining us today the president of Hope Media Group, Joe Paulo. Hello, Joe, and thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be with you.
And also Mark Ramsey, who's the creator and producer of this reimagined Scrooge. Hello, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, I'm thrilled to be here.
All right. So, Jill, we'll start with you. For those who may not be familiar with Hope Media Group and its affiliation with KSBJ, talk to us a little bit about that.
It's been a great journey. So if you're not familiar with the name Hope Media Group, that's our corporate name. So KSBJ is part of Hope Media Group. And where that stemmed from was a couple of years ago, we began to understand that all the things that is being done at this ministry that most people know as KSBJ extend beyond just what you hear on KSBJ.
Yes.
So we changed the name of our corporate identity to Hope Media Group. And then God brought along this opportunity for us to merge with another national ministry and bring these two healthy ministries together. This was just about a year and a half ago in early 2022. And so it was just beautiful the way that we had already changed the name to Hope Media Group. This newly merged entity that now has a national footprint is also Hope Media Group. So we've got KSBJ here in Houston. We have a national radio network called Way FM that extends from Florida all the way out to the West Coast and a whole bunch of places in between. We've got a Spanish Christian radio network now called Vida Unida that's here in Houston and also in Miami and New York City. Plus we have digital platforms, and that's where we really get into talking about podcasts. But that's all just a brief snapshot of what Hope Media Group is.
Wow. So now all of these entities are coming together to make this podcast available. Is that correct?
Yeah. So Hope Media Group is one ministry, but it has many platforms. So
Yes.
KSBJ is a platform, Way FM is a platform. And part of our platforms are a podcast network through Hope Nation. And that's where, we understand that so many Americans are listening to podcasts every week. And this is a great opportunity for us to be in this space and sharing content through podcast form, knowing that the majority of Americans are engaged with podcasts, and we can do podcasts that are fun and meaningful and encouraging people and helping them move forward with the mission that we have.
Speaking of, what is the mission of Hope Media Group?
I'm so glad you asked. Everything that we do, Kim, ultimately we want to help people to love Jesus a little bit more, to serve other people a little bit more, and to ultimately spread the life-changing hope that is only found in Jesus Christ. So a lot of times you'll see this in writing. We actually capitalize the word hope with capital H because we're not talking about, of course, a generic sense of hope. Like, I hope I get this for Christmas. We're talking about that life-changing hope. And that's how this new podcast that we're talking about today fits so beautifully into that.
In its newly imagined form, there are themes that will bespeak hope. Isn't that correct? Like redemption and transformation, things like that.
I think when I first hear about another rendition of A Christmas Carol, the question is begged, well, why? It's been done a few times before, but you touched on it, right? There are some beautiful themes in that story that working together with Mark, and we'll hear from Mark in just a moment, but we were able to really highlight these important themes of forgiveness and compassion and freedom. All of those were highlighted in a very unique way that you'll have never heard or seen before as presented in this story.
Well, Mark, we cannot wait to hear from you. So if you will just jump right in and talk to us about A Christmas Carol and your impetus for creating this new version of it. Tell us about that.
So I'm so glad you asked that and I appreciate so much what Joe is talking about because he's so right. Here's the thing I want to pull back to. This is not so much about creating a podcast as it is about telling a familiar story in a very new way. We deliberately, the question of why even do this, we set out to do this because inherent in this story were certain faith-related themes, but they had never been really surfaced before. If you think about it, there has never been, to my knowledge, really a faith-forward version of A Christmas Carol told. And we thought, what a great opportunity because all the themes are right there. But this is a version that shares those themes more vividly and also isn't afraid to mention the source of the season. That's another thing that you never see in A Christmas Carol. You never see a reference to Jesus. Mm-hmm. That reference is here. We make that connection clear. And also we were intent on doing this in a way that didn't tell this very same story with all the same familiar beats that you've seen and heard before. There are things in this story, there are twists in this story, there are elements in this story which are new to you, which you will have never seen or never heard. Most people have never heard an audio version of A Christmas Carol. Those who have largely either heard a retelling, a narrated retelling of the story, like an audiobook. And that's not what this is. This is a full cast version of the story with dynamic, vivid sound effects, much more like a movie than an audiobook. And it's with cinematic talent. It's with talent you know. It's with actors you know, like Sean Astin, who you would know from Stranger Things and Rudy and Lord of the Rings, and John Rhys Davies, the narrator, who you would know from Indiana Jones and Lord of the Rings, and many other actors that are familiar to you in various work, all coming together for this very special project. Now, I have to tell you, they were really thrilled to do it, and that's the most wonderful thing about this project.
Absolutely. Well, all I know is when I listened to the trailer, the first word that came to mind is nostalgia. Just being able to listen and imagine, because the sound quality is phenomenal. And so it takes you back to that place where, depending on how young you are, you can remember when listening to the radio with your family, that was major entertainment. And it literally, you were able to paint those pictures and those scenarios in your mind. And so I can't say enough, Joe and Mark, about the quality of this podcast, that it is definitely something that will be extremely entertaining, and it will awaken the imaginations of young children as they are listening into the podcast. And so tell us, how will listeners be inspired by Scrooge, A Christmas Carol, during the hustle and bustle of the holiday season?
For a lot of families, watching some version of A Christmas Carol is their entry point into the holiday season. It's why there are so many versions of it, right? Because we never get tired of it. People keep twisting it and turning it into new versions, comedy and drama and horror in some cases. But yet the elements of the story remain the same. It's like setting a table, right? You want to set the table for the meal, and you want to set the table right so that you have the best meal you can have. And A Christmas Carol is a story that sets the table for the holiday season and puts people in the right mind of giving rather than receiving, of hope, of mercy, of forgiveness, of redemption. All of those themes are there. All of the things we want to remind ourselves of during the Christmas season, we want to remind our children of, and we want to remind each other of. They're all there in that story, which is why it's such a great kickoff to the holiday season. And obviously, Christmas Day itself.
It's a beautiful story of redemption, and right, every story that is so captivating has that element of redemption in it, and that's why this is so enjoyable. I'll talk to my wife, and she'll say one of the worst movies or one of the worst things you can listen to is where there's no resolve at the end. There's no closure.
Yes.
Because you reach this climactic moment when Scrooge has a turn of heart, and that's the point of redemption, right? And that's so beautiful, and you get to experience that together as a family. You get to hear this transformation. You get to hear what the outcome of it is, and that's what we're all about, right? We're all on a story. We're all on a journey of redemption, and of course, ultimate redemption coming only through God's Son, Jesus Christ, which is what the whole Christmas story is all about. So that's
right.
what makes this such a beautiful pairing.
That's really true. And I think, to me, I'm attracted to those kinds of stories as well, which are the best stories. The people who know storytelling better than anybody will all tell you that the greatest stories are recipes on how to live a better life. They contain survival information. Through the struggles of the hero or heroine, you get to learn how to cope with the challenges of being alive. And this is just fundamentally this story. And it's just, I'm just so proud to be associated with it. I'm so excited that Joe and his team were willing to make it possible. Because this is one of those things that doesn't have to exist. It exists because a small group of people wish and will it into existence. And that's what Hope Media Group did. So I couldn't be more grateful to you guys, Joe.
Well, you did a phenomenal job. I was talking to somebody who's had an opportunity to get a preview of it, and they listened to it with headphones on. And I understand that's not going to be most people's experience, but they commented on the sound design behind it. This is no shallow production effort. This is a serious, as you said, I believe, cinematic quality audio experience. And so if you do listen to it with headphones, you're going to notice the depth and the beauty behind the story and the script.
So there may be folks, Mark or Joe, who might say, why should I listen if I've seen this numerous times before? What will be different in this experience?
First of all, you have probably seen it. You have probably not heard it. That's number one. So I think you owe it to yourself to open up to a new way of experiencing a familiar story. And again, I've heard a lot of audio versions of A Christmas Carol, and none of them sound like this. None of them are as ambitious as this. I don't think even any of them are as professional as this. But if you want an experience that's truly worth your time, which is precious, then this is that experience. That's number one. Number two is, this is not, we deliberately said, I had a conversation with the writer before we started this, and I said, look, if we're going to do this, let's make it worth doing. Let's make it worth doing for us. Let's make it worth doing for Hope Media Group. Let's make it worth listening to for the listener. Let's make it different enough so that there's something new, something fresh in here, something that you haven't heard or seen 100 times. And that's why I think this is really so worthwhile, is because there are actually fresh elements in here that will be surprising. And I think if you've never had the experience, and I haven't talked with Joe about this yet, but if you've never had the experience of listening to an audio show and having it touch your heart, maybe even generating a tear, then this is going to change you ever after, because this is that experience.
I couldn't say it any better myself. I would liken it to this. You know how you will drive down a road and you know the things that you're passing and you're seeing. But if you walk down that same road, you notice so much more. Wow, I didn't remember seeing that. And that's what this is like. You know, it's one thing to watch the movie, and we've all probably seen various movie versions of this, but listening to this is like walking down that street, and you're able to notice things that you didn't know were even in the story. And we highlighted different elements that are biblical in nature and so redemptive in the themes. And the only other thing that I would add to what Mark said is, why should you listen to this? Well, would you enter into this time of year? It is so crazy. It is so busy. We're all running here and there. We're shopping and we're going to parties and we're still trying to manage workload. But it's important to take opportunities to put a nail in the wall and to hang the season on that hook in the wall and to really contemplate the season and to take that moment with your family. And I think what we've created here together is that proverbial coat hook on the wall that we can hang the season, we can reflect on a beautiful story that paints a really important picture and that points our minds to the things that are most important. And that is what Christmas is all about in Jesus.
One of the points I want to make clear is that this is not just a one-shot deal. This is a 4-part series, correct? So people can actually listen. You don't have to, it's not a one and done. You can actually plan some family activity around this, whether you choose to do it all in that one sitting, which will probably be, pretty big commitment of time, or if you decide to just do it one day at a time, to just really savor the moments, create the memories. This will be a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And this will launch very, very soon. November 16th, you will have that opportunity to text, and we'll give you all of those details that you need. You'll be able to text 67101 and begin to receive those new episodes of Scrooge, A Christmas Carol. So, Joe, tell us, in addition to listening to Scrooge, A Christmas Carol, what are some additional resources that our listeners can expect to see?
Well, this was the other huge part of why we did this in the first place, not only for the audio experience that you can have and listen to this 4-part podcast, but we've created this small group study, these questions to be a companion to this podcast so that it can foster conversation. You sit down and listen to this with your family, with your kids, or your Sunday school class, or your home group. You can go through these questions, and it really helps draw your attention to those things that we've already talked about, that we highlight in the podcast, and it gets you thinking about it. And it references, well, what does the Bible say about that? Because ultimately, we want this to be more than just an enjoyable experience. And mind you, it will be an enjoyable experience. But we want this to help you turn thoughts inward and be introspective of, well, like what how does this look like in my life? What does this application look for my family? And what are some steps that maybe we can take as a result of embracing this story?
That is wonderful. If you're just tuning in, we are speaking with Joe Paulo, the president of Hope Media Group, and also Mark Ramsey, who's the creative producer for A Christmas Carol. It's a podcast presentation by Hope Media Group and Compassion International. Absolutely add to the enjoyment of the season as you listen to this podcast. So, Mark, tell us, what can listeners learn from Ebenezer Scrooge, and how can they apply that to their own lives?
The story of Ebenezer Scrooge is a story of someone who begins one way and ends another, who, through a lot of strife and a lot of life lessons, learns the value of faith, the value of love, the value of giving, really learns how to be a better person. And I think that transformation is exactly the thing that we all yearn for at this time of year. So I think what people will learn from him more than anything is that, yes, you're somewhere on this path between Ebenezer Scrooge at the beginning of the story and Ebenezer Scrooge at the end. But that destination is out there. You're going to reach it. Keep trying, keep struggling, keep going, and the spirits will help you, and Jesus will help you reach that destination. Redemption is as close as the end of the story.
Will kids be as interested in Scrooge, A Christmas Carol podcast as adults, or vice versa?
Well, I think it's a twofold thing. One is parents will be interested in it for their kids. That will help introduce the kids to it. And I think the kids, once they get into it, kids are very imaginative. Kids are more imaginative than we adults in many cases. And the beauty of an audio experience that's full cast like this is that it commands attention and it sparks your imagination. So to the degree that kids like to have their imagination sparked, and after all, kids are more likely to listen to podcasts than adults nowadays in many cases, I think it's an ideal way to experience the story and understand the import of the season from that perspective.
Well, to piggyback onto that, a recent Kids Listen study, nearly 75% of families said that after listening to a podcast, kids started discussions related to what they had just heard. And, of course, the younger ones want to commonly quote and act out some of the scenes they heard. They want to listen again, and they want to learn more about what they just had heard. So if you're a parent, this is an incredible opportunity, and the research bears out that opportunity.
Awesome. So if you're tuning in and you've been hearing us talk about Scrooge, A Christmas Carol, and you just cannot, you can't wait to access it, all you need to do is text Scrooge, that's SCROOGE, to 67101, and the new episodes will be released beginning November 17th. Or you can also enter to win a script that is signed by the cast. And if you, again, will tell us, Mark, who are some of the members of that cast are?
Sure, absolutely. Before I do that, though, I want to let everybody know that you can access the podcast right now. You'll hear only the trailer, only the kickoff to it before the launch date, but you can access it right now. You can follow it right now. You can get in line to subscribe to it right now, and it's all free, and it's available wherever you can find podcasts. So the cast includes folks like Sean Astin, as I said, from Lord of the Rings, John Rhys Davies from Indiana Jones, Clive Standen from Vikings, Bethany Joy Lenz, who starred in One Tree Hill, Maxwell Caulfield, who was in Grease 2 back in the day, Ben Barnes, who was Prince Caspian in Chronicles of Narnia, the legendary Juliette Mills. Is for the older members of the audience will recognize her name. She's the sister of Haley Mills, who did lots of Disney movies back in the day. And she did movies with Jack Lemmon for Billy Wilder. And that's just a taste of who's in the story. The most interesting thing I think that I can share with you about the Cratchit family is that when you take and Joe has seen this photo, but if you take a family photo of the Cratchits, we all have a mental image of the Cratchits with all the kids and Mary Cratchit and Bob Cratchit, the two adults. If you take a cast photo, you'll see that they were all different kinds of people, all different ages. Tiny Tim is played by a wonderful actor who's about 26 and has tattoos down her arm. The magic of audio is really magical because it's so cool to look at this cast photo and see all these diverse people, Black, white, Hispanic, and then you listen to their voices and it sounds like the Cratchits. It's just a really interesting experience.
I want to thank Compassion International, too. This would not have been possible without our great partnership that we have with them. And it's not lost on me that, baked right into their name, Compassion International is really a key part of this story. So we're so thankful for them. I never set out to memorize their mission statement, but Compassion is all about releasing kids from poverty in Jesus' name. And when you really listen to this story, this podcast series, it's really about releasing people from the poverty of their own spirit. And so it's just, the old saying, it's a match made in heaven, that Compassion and Hope Media Group could come together to make Scrooge, A Christmas Carol possible.
Although the official launch is November 17th, the Scrooge podcast is available right now wherever you listen to podcasts. Or you may also text Scrooge to 67101 to receive the new episodes as they are released.
And Kim, if you text Bah Humbug to 67101, you don't get anything.
All right.
Yeah.
That is amazing. That's good. Awesome. All right. So, Joe, what lasting memories would you hope will linger with families as they experience this podcast this holiday season?
I believe that this has incredible potential to build in lifelong memories and important discussions with families as they listen to this. And really I don't think it's overstating it to say that this could be a new tradition, right? This story is timeless, and the way this is written is timeless and fresh, and it focuses on some of the most endearing aspects and some of the things that we hold most dear that Jesus taught, that's right out of Scripture.
And Mark, as the creator-producer, what do you hope these families will walk away with after they experience this unique podcast?
Well, I think Christmas in many ways is a time to remember things. It's a memory time. And I think we all have memories of Christmas past. And I visualize people, parents and their children listening to this series, and the look on the child's face as he or she is paying attention to what's coming out of the earbuds or the headphones or the speakers. And that look of engagement, that look of understanding, that look of interest, that look of compassion is something that will always stay with that child, that memory. And seeing that look will always stay with that parent. I mean, these are the moments that make memories. And Scrooge: A Christmas Carol is a great spark to those memories, suitable for this holiday season. And I couldn't be prouder than to be part of it.
Well, thank you so much. We've been speaking with Mark Ramsey, who is the producer, creator for Scrooge: A Christmas Carol podcast, and also Joe Paulo, who is our president and CEO of Hope Media Group. Thank you both for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And as always, thank you to our wonderful listening audience for joining us. And we hope you'll tune in again next week for another edition of Community Beat. This is Kim Kasi McKee on 89.3 KSBJ.
Thanks for joining us for Community Beat with Kim Kasi McKee. Join us every Saturday morning at 5:30 on 89.3 KSBJ.